Second, 2025, and we have a form.
Thank you. And with that, let's do a pledge of allegiance, which they said they would do. On screen. I think it's going to be on a monitor.
Sorry.
There we go. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, let's do roll call.
Absolutely.
Daniel McCauley, Richard Weiss.
Here.
Judith Stern,
Here.
Michael Albetta,
Here.
and Mary Pellegrin.
Here.
Great. I have a question though. How do we know? We had to cancel the last meeting because Dan McCauley couldn't make it. So that's now 2 meetings. And how do we address that? Normally,
I'll have to look at the limitations in the.
yeah, because the meeting was canceled from last month.
Yeah.
Because of his failure to be able to attend and Michael's inability to attend.
So we'll have to look at it and see what the limitations are.
It's always been advertised that we meet the first Thursday of every month, so.
There may be a distinction between it was canceled, but if that was the reason.
It was
That's hard,
canceled
yeah.
because he couldn't make it. And I wasn't sure if that was correct because I don't think he took his oath to accept. He may have or may not have.
We'll have to talk to the clerk's office.
Yeah, please do. I mean, we've spent too much time on this. It's too important of an issue to have unnecessary delays. Paul, do you want to walk us through the Charter Revision Board memo review?
Oh boy. Yeah, but if you give me a minute, let me see if I can find.
Sure.
Let's see if I can find.
And just since this is a live meeting, which normally isn't, this charter revision has been meeting since 2023. Richard Weiss has been kind enough to be the board member that has worked and set up all the agendas, working with the city staff, so that we always know there's eyes and review and a lot of discussion. All the items that we have discussed over the last really 2 years, we never took one item and just reviewed it and was discarded. We would bring it back and bring it back with revisions and deeper conversations. We've had guest speakers here based on concerns dealing with the Code of Conduct of Ethics. The city elected officials are governed by the Broward County Charter that the voters voted for. So they did a presentation with the Office of the Inspector General, who governs over that. We've had a speaker when Richard put on the agenda about having a discussion about a strong mayor, elected mayor. Mary Pellegrin that time was here at the meetings representing the Council of Civic Association and said that it was not an issue they were interested in at the time. But we proceeded and I was able to get through FAU, a speaker, Peter Cruz, who's also head of the Ethics Commission up in Palm Beach. We have at every meeting public input. We also have an email system for anyone from the public that wants to participate and send emails over. We are advertised. Every meeting's public. Every meeting has been shown on YouTube due to past conflicts with the Marine Advisory Board. Therefore, we weren't live, but we were up on YouTube. So every meeting of ours was held with the public and accessed by the public for 2 years. We also have a liaison, Jania, who was always kind enough to be available and attend to many of the Council of Civic Association. Jim Concannon is here tonight, who's on the Council of Civic Association. I know he's posted on their council minutes and agendas for our meetings. So there's always been a lot of access to the public. Those of us that are appointed, we all have a responsibility in dealing directly with the person that appoints us, attending meetings when they ask us to in their districts. So we've had a lot of interchangeable. A lot of the issues that we started out came up because of people's concerns, the way the elections were treated. Back in 2022, after the 3 commissions were elected and the stalemate attitude to try to delay them being seated, which forced us to start moving forward on some of these issues. We also discussed a lot on public lands and P3s. P3s was a subject very important to the council as well as other homeowner groups and people that don't attend homeowner association meetings but were reaching out. P3s are public-private partnerships, basically written by state statute, but there are ways that should be addressed. The charter is very strict on how we give away public land, and I say give away because we're governed by leasing agreements, and what we discovered is that the city, during the time of, I guess, 2019 forward, they started doing licensing agreements which circumvented the intent of the charter governing over the leasing, the leasing of land. So those were a lot of things that we discussed over the last 2 years. We had a lot of input. We had the county attorney's office here a few times, including the attorney for the supervisor of elections to clarify some issues. A lot of things that we also discussed that Richard worked very hard on was advising us on what doesn't necessarily have to be in the charter today. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is that our charter is consistent with state law, that we don't try to do or move forward, which has been some actions in the past here, that is not in compliance with state law, just by oversight or people not having the knowledge. So with that, I know, Richard, you worked with the city staff on putting together tonight's agenda.
Well, there's not much on the agenda. I think we're sort of at a transitional stage here. Judy, I know that your term is over. And then, so we're missing, I'm like the sole survivor here. But there's gonna be actually 4 new board members altogether.
True.
Right, 1, 2, and then Michael and Mary, you, and then Mr. McCauley, and one other one. I guess is the 4th one been appointed?
Well, Pam has chosen to appoint me, so until that gets rectified.
Okay, so are you, what I'm trying to figure
I'm
out is
still here as
where to
chair.
go from here, you know.
Yes,
Wouldn't this be your last meeting?
we don't know.
I
Pam,
think it is.
well, Mary, there's a
It
lot that
is.
you
We voted
still have to
3-2.
learn, so
It's
Yeah.
voted 3-2?
this is a learning process for you. So, Richard, you want to move
Reason I
forward
was-
with the agenda?
The reason I was raising it was because I think there should be some consensus among all, about like where we go from here, what we do with the work that the prior configuration did. And my feeling is that we did a tremendous amount of really good work. I wouldn't even hazard a guess as to what happened when we met with the city commission, and there was, I'm not gonna even put it this way, it was not accepted. A lot of it was not accepted by the city commission. They basically sent us back to the drawing board, and but there was a lot of good work done. And my suggestion would be with the, with the new members, and Judy, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I think that we should, most of the stuff that we did was not political, not controversial, just stuff that needed to be done because things were not operating correctly. And so my suggestion would be is that that the new board members, either go through it themselves. There's a lot of stuff that we did. Whether we set up whether we have on an agenda basically for Paul, when to go through in great detail what we've done, to see whether you guys agree with what we've done, and maybe come up with a consensus that say, well, these items are ones that we all sort of agree on, and let's leave those as our recommendations, and then there's other things that maybe we need to discuss further. But I'd like to try, because so much work went into the prior work, I'd like to try to salvage as much as, and my feeling is that it was not rejected because of, there was a lot of problems with what we did. It was a lot of other things going on that I won't sort of get into. And I think that we should not just say, well, they didn't like what we did, so let's just start from the beginning again, because I really think that's the case. So that would be my suggestion, which is to start with the new group and have them digest what we've done, make sure you guys feel comfortable with it or not comfortable with it, and then sort of go from there. So that would be my suggestion.
Why don't we ask what suggestions they have of the work that we did that they, because they were here participating.
Well, Michael wasn't here.
Well, Michael's on the board of the Council of Civic Association, which was part of people that had the input. And Michael, you came in June to a meeting here, said that you would be kind of up to speed.
Sure. So if I may, I think I voiced my opinion at the commission meeting, that we need to outreach a little bit more, much more, not a little bit more, much more. The various different civic associations have public meetings. Just like, Fort Lauderdale has done a magnificent job of branding. We, as the CRB, need to go out there and hold public forums and inform the PD. So we can say that we did our duty and that we informed the various different communities. If you take a consensus in various different areas, the District 3, District 2, District 1, District 4, you ask various different people about CRB and about what's going on, they'll say, I have not the foggiest idea. And these are civic associations.
Well,
And I of course, I've already did this. And I went around and I asked, I said, are you aware of what they said, I don't know what you're talking about. So, needless to say, it is what it is. And another free advertising. I mean, I'm the president of my civic association. I'll be willing to put, pointers, and we have a quarterly newsletter. For instance, Imperial Point, Betty Shelley, she has a magnificent newsletter. She put it in there in 2 minutes. And you can go on and on and on about this, and it's just common sense. And this is where, I'm honored to sit on this board and to make sure that this gets out of your great work that you've done and everybody else has done before. Okay, here it is.
the comments that you made about reaching out, I know that based on the person that pointed me and the person prior to that pointed me, I would attend the pre-agenda meetings so that I could present to their homeowners group. I do that on a regular basis. So again, part of your responsibility as a board member is to communicate with the person that appoints you to a board and attend the meetings if they ask. We also, again, prior to, I would say 2008, they had no liaison going out there, and they used to do, at the end of this, they went into each district, one night into each district to give them a final outcome report. They had very poor results of people turning up, which was why we chose to then create the liaison to the Council of Civic Associations, knowing that that's a broader reach to the homeowners. And we started that practice, which is why, again, I added the public input onto the agendas so that the public felt they could come here and speak out and participate. So we've given a lot of opportunities. And Michael, if you're familiar with the county, and Richard served on that board, you had the public meetings, people came in, no different than what we're doing, to give input and insightful, comments in. As far as District 4, District 3, I know that a lot of input has been discussed at their meetings. District 1, I know there are certain areas that had input on what was going on when people asked. I know, Jim, you participated in some of your District 1 meetings. So there have been opportunities because, again, we are a non-binding board. And I think this is really important to remember. What we do is come up with conclusions of recommendations, and it's up to the commission then to decide what to accept and what to reject. It's then, based on their vote, it goes to the voters. And that's when, under the normal process, and this is exactly what 2019 they did. They went out after they chose what they were putting on the agenda, on the ballot. There was the change of terms to 4 years. There was change to 3 4-year terms, right? And change to November. When after we concluded, no different than we did this time, we held one workshop with them. They took action. Then they went out. They hired a PR firm, and they went out and sold the issues. They can only do education, but that's how it was done. So instead of going out and doing a free-for-all, I'm not sure of any other board, and correct me if I'm wrong, are there any other boards that after every one of their meetings goes out and meets with the public to get input back? Infrastructure task force, sustainability, affordable housing, homelessness. Do any of those boards, besides having their regular meetings, go and attend meetings?
We have other meetings, like infrastructure task force certainly did do that.
What they do?
They did, they had several meetings in different areas. They did, so.
Did they do that after every meeting, or how'd they do it? That's what I'm asking you.
I'm saying, say again?
Did they do it after every one of their meetings?
No, they did not.
Okay. And was that called by the commission, asking them to do joint meetings with them?
I was never on that board, so I couldn't answer that. I just know I went to several of their meetings that were like, meetings for like my area. And they had one in District 2, they had one in District 3, did that, so.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, let me take for instance, because I think I understand what you're saying, but the fact is that like the park bill, bond bill, the police bond bill, that was a very well structured agenda. That was a very intuitive into reaching out into communities, and so people could have dialogue, and people of all different civic associations got involved, and you had the director come out to the meetings, and they put it all together, and it was just that was informative. But when as for the CRB, when Harrison Grand Williams spoke before the board, it was my first time hearing this.
Well,
Meeting at the council.
Yeah, at the council.
Yeah.
And I said, really? This is interesting.
did any, is Julia here?
I'm here.
Okay, hi. Sorry.
Hi.
Was there any time or any effort for any association to request staff to have us come out and do anything like that periodically? Since
I didn't receive anything but via email or by phone for an association presentation. Personally, I did not.
Well, I can say that normally, most civic associations they have people ask to come and speak. They wouldn't really necessarily know to come and ask for, one of us to come and speak. So, a lot of times my agendas are filled automatically by different entities wanting to come and present stuff. So, and about things I wouldn't know about if they didn't reach out to me. So I think that thinking that they're gonna ask us to come, that's not the way it doesn't work that way. It's the opposite way.
Michael, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I wanna make sure that I understand, we've heard before that the whole public participation part of our process has been deficient. When we met with the commission, they talked about it, you're talking about it, so there's obviously something that needs to be addressed in terms of, okay. What I'm trying to understand is, there's sort of, in my mind, sort of two ways to do it. One way is to go to the public and say, listen, we're in a charter review process. Are there things in the charter that you would like to change? what problems do you think there are? What ways do you think what way could the charter be improved? So that's one way to do it. And the other way is to talk about, these are the things that we think need to be changed, and what do you think about, what do you have in mind? Which do you have sort of an open forum, like what's wrong, or presenting what we're doing? What do you
I
think?
think the work that has been done is great work. I wouldn't wanna see it redone. I think that if it's presented to people in smaller pieces rather than that
Big chunk.
Right.
big thing.
If I said this, and let me rephrase it. I mean, I don't know who was at the commission meeting when I spoke there, but it was like 25 pounds of information put in a 5-pound bag. And you don't give that to people, and try to absorb that in
So
2
what
minutes.
are you suggesting?
So what I
in
suggest
terms
is,
of-
what I did was, and I said to, because I'm saying, so here's a remedy for the problem. One of the best agencies that the city has is neighborhood support, and to come at and to use them, and to utilize all their information, whether it, excuse me, you asked me a question. So the fact is that, and I'm a very, very big believer of them, because I watch them, how they deliver their information. You follow me?
Yes.
Okay. So the fact is that if they can mimic that information, again, what they do for various different programs that they have, they can certainly do it for this, for the CRB. And I'm very passionate about it.
Yes.
Because I take anything that I sit on, or that I put my name on, I want to make sure that it's personified.
Yes.
He knows it. He knows the way I work.
Yeah.
And point of information for the record, because I was pointing, Jim Kincannon knows the way I work. And everything that I do regarding for the city of Fort Lauderdale. So people know that. For instance, watch, hold on a second. Let me just use an additive. USS Fort Lauderdale. I was the under-chair of outreach for that. That's right. Yeah, and I served it very well. And I made sure that we set up various different tents and organizations we went around it. I'm not saying that you have to do it in that fashion, but for civic associations, they should be given a package and everything else. So they said, I wasn't informed. Oh, yes, you were. Now you're duly informed.
To Mary's point,
Yes.
do you think there is a lot of material?
There is, it's good, it's
Do
good
you think
material.
that when this information is presented to the civic associations, it should be done as a large package, or do you think it should be done in smaller packages?
I think it's smaller packages.
And put a link.
Jim?
Just a casual observation. In terms of starting this fresh for 2020, the outreach effort, it would seem like the first step would be educating the civic associations, the public, on why this is important. Because we're talking about some of the nitty-gritty and the techniques, but you have to get people's attention. And if you tell them why this is important, a lot of the people who have interest in the stadium and the redevelopment of the stadium, or the EMR, and we're very opposed to it. So you can take anything that we discussed over the past year and a half in terms of public, as an example, public leasing of public land, or public-private partnerships, and get people to understand that what this board is doing is addressing those issues, election issues, terms, leases, long-term leases, all those things. But I think that would put the hook in, get them interested, because now they have a stake in the
So
game.
you think they need sort of an orientation kind of?
High level. This is why this
Not a
is
bad
important to you. This is why you should pay attention to this. It's just like saying, well, why don't you think about voting? Because you complain about what the government's doing, so did you vote? No, I didn't vote. Well, so get people interested, get some buy-in from why they should want to listen. And then you give them
So
the
wait,
information.
Here's another thing. When you pay your light bill.
Excuse me, Michael.
Excuse me,
So-
Madam Chair. No, I'm saying, excuse me, ma'am. You have the floor.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So basically, undo everything from the past where the final decision is for the commission to utilize their services because we can't direct staff. Therefore, only the city manager can direct staff. For the commission to authorize through the city manager's office for strategic communications, which they spend, $2.5 million for or so, to go out and start organizing educational and informational over the next year.
You're asking me?
And Michael, I'm asking Michael that as well, because that's what he's saying, we have these resources. We can't direct that, we have no power to direct.
Here's another thing, if I may say, you pay your water bill, the city water bill, put it on the city water bill. Did you know, are you a voter? This is what's gonna happen.
Again, we can't do that.
Well, we can direct them,
We can ask.
We
We
can't
ask, we
direct.
can ask.
period.
It's up to the commission to ask.
So,
It's common sense.
okay, so
Well,
Judy, what do you think about the idea of a first step, sort of an orientation, let everybody know this is going on, and then sort of what you said, whet their appetite or whatever the word used. What do you think about starting with that?
well, again, I think going back to, that was the concept of having the Council of Civic Association being involved, because you have how many members in the
About
council?
50.
Therefore, they had much more ability to be the liaison to those neighborhoods and
But
communities.
apparently it didn't
I
work so
guess,
well.
gather that they didn't.
It didn't, I mean, it
See?
didn't somehow,
Well,
okay,
I mean,
And
we
we
would
can't-
report.
we cannot
would report,
direct.
But then, you know, it's a little report, and then when Harrison came, I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was like.
It was a
okay,
lot.
so.
I mean, I was looking around the
What
room.
if, what if,
Richard?
okay, so what would be, when you, Michael, when you did the outreach for the US,
Fort Lauderdale?
I mean, how did that, was it, did you sort of work with the staff and the staff, how did that work?
Sure, I worked with the neighborhood support. I worked with various other different agencies to make sure that it was out there and it was presented properly.
Okay,
And
so-
then we went back to the council a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah.
Just not once.
Got it.
You follow me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, so how would we, there seems to be a feeling that we need to sort of do this sort of orientation process. I think it's a really good idea. And to start getting people interested and then maybe have a series of, feed them a series of, this is what we're talking about at this meeting and this is what we're talking about, you know, those kind of things. Somehow it needs to be done in smaller ways.
And if I may say, Madam Chair.
Yep.
And another good, two great county agencies, the property appraiser's office, and as well as the new tax collector. You know, you use those, this, you know, when they put it in the bill, you say, are you aware that, especially if you targeted for the city of Fort Lauderdale? You know, and they could put a link there or something like this. Are you aware that the charter revision is gonna happen? Or, you know, just something, you know, just ask, you just put a link.
Well, let me ask you a question. Infrastructure task force, which is really key here in the city.
Uh-huh.
Sustainability, really key. Planning and zoning board, which has the greatest impact. Board of adjustment, two boards that have final determination of those boards where it doesn't even have to go to the commission for approval. Do they do it differently than we do to communicate to the public so that the public knows what's going on in those boards?
It kind of depends on the topic, so I mean, I have a lot of background with planning and zoning board. So, you know, if we're working on ordinance that requires PZB approval and it's something that's going to be effective to the neighborhood associations, planning staff will go out to those associations that are impacted by it or all of them if we need to.
But, excuse me, but Anthony, but not the board, correct?
Not the board,
Not
or
the
staff.
Especially because it's quasi-judicial, so it would.
Yeah, so it's usually held by staff, but I think this conversation is really good because this is one of the things I was hoping to get out of this.
So it's on your
Today.
list of things.
Yeah, because if you look on page 5 of the backup material, you'll see that the staff's already met to talk about how to do this. One of the challenges we have is that there is so much data, you know, to your point, when Harrison presented it, people start to glaze over.
Yeah.
And so it from our perspective, and I think in talking to Richard, it makes more sense to break it down by broader topic. explain to them why the charter is important, obviously,
Sure.
educate people on that, but to get into, 8.11 is really tied to 7.16, which is tied to 3.03, it's just,
Yeah.
ugh. So I think, and what we had kind of come up with, and this is the feedback I was hoping to bring back to that work, I'll call them a working group for lack of a better term, but basically structural communication, strategic communication, was to develop like a series of workshops per quarter. To kind of have a touch point where people could get in, like maybe initially go out and do a lot of outreach to get people to understand what it is, and then have regular ones that happen at different intervals because you're years away from getting it on a ballot. And I think that the data will get stale if we, take too long between things, but if we do it too often, people would get disinterested because a lot of these topics take a lot of time to vet and have Paul research on and come back with recommended changes and that kind of stuff. But if you talk about it like, hey, does it matter to you whether or not the city manager lives within the city boundaries? Here's why we're asking the question, blah, blah, blah. Maybe people can
Maybe you want to break
digest
it
it
out
better.
into legal requirements and what a charter means by law that governs, because I don't think people understand once it's in the charter.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
law.
I've kind of tested this theory on some of my friends who have no idea what I do for a living apparently, but
When someone violates the charter,
they don't understand what a charter is, they don't understand what, why it's there, and when you say it in a very succinct kind of matter of fact manner, it's how the city governs. It's the rules for
Anthony,
government.
could you just to drill down a little bit, so if we start out, let's say, with some sort of, hey, we're doing this is what it's about, this is what the charter is, start out with that, somehow disseminate that. And then,
broad subjects maybe,
what?
and broad subjects that are in the charter.
Yeah, that's right, how, how voting and, just to get people's attention.
See that word you just used? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Voting?
Yeah.
People.
well,
Yeah.
one of the very first things we discussed at the charter review back in 2023 was prioritizing the elections, prioritizing P3s and public lands. And that started out as our first topics, and then we pulled in the ethics. And Richard brought forward about looking at change of government, which is why we had the speakers. So we started out with 4 tough topics. It was then decided that the board wanted to start looking article by article through the charter.
We dealt with the hot button things, and then we decided that we went back and we started to go through, article by article. But just sort of going back to this, Anthony, so the first step, could you guys develop some sort of a orientation plan for us to Michael's point and Jim's point and Mary, to sort of let people know, like, hey, we're doing this, right? Circus is coming to town, something. And then what your ideas on how these workshops would go after that. Does that make sense?
It does, and quite frankly, I mean, this information, I don't know how it'll be pieced together, but it can come to the council every meeting. As long as it's,
That's right.
not an hour presentation, but I mean, just, I think if it's talked about at every meeting, it's not a bad thing. So,
I think Paul had a good idea, which is if we start talk about the topics
yeah,
that we're talking about,
Mhm.
then people could say, oh, I'm sort of interested in what happens to the parks and land.
yeah,
Maybe I can come to the meeting, or maybe I could watch it. So if we give them a preview of what we're gonna be talking about next.
Another thing, Madam Chair,
Yeah.
and also Richard, is the presentation of it. If you make like maybe like a booklet of it or something like this, that's streamlined, that you can streamline it. And then, for instance, one of the grand things that the city does is they have was it neighborhood night, or the verbiage is
Neighbor support night.
neighborhood support night, and we, meaning sitting on the council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association, we have a specific table, and and everybody, watch this now, and everybody comes for that book. They come to get their stamp, to get in that booklet because they want to get in a prize and everything else. We can have that booklet there. Here, take this. Here, take this.
So really what you're saying what you
Marketing.
just said on the marketing end, which we can't do ourselves, when the council had those opportunities, they could have brought forward what they were learning here.
Well, we did in a way, but I
I
mean,
gave reports when time allowed at every meeting. Remember, there's only, 12 meetings a year? And there was.
More meetings than
11.
we had.
Right, so,
Yeah. And people did ask questions, but
They
you know,
did.
but it's still, when
And
all
did
the
you ever
information
do-
was presented, it was just too much.
Did you ever think to then, if people had questions, to reach out to the city staff to ask them to come and present?
No, we didn't think to do that.
And the other thing I noticed is that certain members that would come here and attend our meetings and participate through public input, et cetera, who would sign in saying they're representing an organization. When I would talk to individuals in those organizations and they would refer me to their minutes, there was no reports given from the person that was attending our meetings to educate them on what we were doing. So we're making the assumption that's why individuals were here, signing up, participating in the communications, but not taking it back. But again, we can't direct staff to do anything. The commissioners can talk to the city manager's office. Anthony, you've got that role here.
Yep.
We've
And
got
we've
Jania
been,
here with neighborhood support.
we've been directed by the commission to do additional outreach, so I think the direction's been given. And it's just a matter of developing that program with your input and then coming up with a schedule and moving it forward.
Okay, so since Anthony has to do this, I mean, I guess the thing, so to one, develop this sort of here we are kind of thing, some sort of program, something, if it's a booklet, it could be a booklet, whatever it is, just to let people know this process is going on, and to look out for future installments, and then maybe put together grouping of things that we're gonna discuss. And that could be a next version, a next edition of this sort of outreach. And let us know what that would sort of look like, you know?
Okay. No problem.
Because it's, I mean, listen, we've heard it from everybody, there's a big hole in this process. You know, we've tried, Judy, we really did try, but there's a lot of dissatisfaction, I think.
And dissatisfaction from individuals.
Well, when we met with the commission, there was dissatisfaction, they were very, I don't know, anyway. I feel that there's just, our new board members are dissatisfied, so.
Well, but again, it was never this board that withheld information or opportunities. And the city always had on the website all the public
No, I
input.
think we had the best of intentions, it just was not, and it just didn't
And it worked
work.
well in the past. And again, as far as doing an educational training, that's usually done at the conclusion of when the commission makes a decision as to what they want to bring forward. Again, it's all probably tied into resources of what they have available.
But I think that they, are looking for that input so that they can use it in their determination of what to change, right? Based on your recommendations. So, but we'll develop that, and I'll have something for you by the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Judy, the other, going back to what you said, I would ask the new board members, what is it that you need in order to get up to speed on all the stuff that we've done? Do you need for us to go through it with you, page by page by page? Do you need Paul to do an orientation for you? How do we help you get up to speed on the work that's been done so you can decide?
Well, I was here
You were here for a lot of it.
most of it, and so, as Jim was,
Jim.
and Michael for part of it, so.
I mean, do
I mean,
you
it just
feel
like
like
when I
you're
saw
up to
47 pages, I started looking at it, I go, I think I'm gonna finish this tomorrow.
Yeah, but do you feel, how can we help you get up to speed?
I think maybe an orientation or something like that, and streamline it.
Maybe wait till Daniel.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be most appropriate, to have the other member of the board, the new
So
member
do you
of the
think
board.
that we should do, in addition to getting a report from Anthony, Judy, do you think we could do that at our next meeting? Have Paul go through there is a summary memo that's not so summary, it's a lot.
Well, what about what you did show at the council, I mean, even though I said people started to, or I started to glaze over, but this is a different
Different
group of
audience.
people, so
Yeah.
I mean, it really was good, it was just,
Yeah, we still have that
maybe
presentation.
take that and, you know, crunch it down a little bit, cause it was good.
It's not actually a
What
little-
is that? What is it?
Remember, the council, Harrison came and gave,
Oh,
he was there,
It was a
from
PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, it's a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
But yeah, do you think that's a good idea?
What do you think about that for our next meeting?
Well, Paul wants to,
May I just suggest something? As we've seen, what ultimately happens will be up to the city commission.
Yes.
It's their decision, it's their charter, or at least they govern what changes in the charter. The city commission has given some direction on what this board should do, and may I suggest that you jump on, initially, jump on what the city commission has suggested, has directed. It might be more correct to say directed, because if you look at the memo from December 5th on page 1, there's a list of things, direction provided by the city commission at the September 17th joint workshop related to. So there are those issues, and then, as Anthony was saying on page 5, additional city commission direction. So would it not make sense to jump on those things first? Some of them we've addressed. And so we could revisit the ones that we've addressed. But then there are others, for example, strong mayor form of government. It was addressed in a presentation, but I don't think you ever really discussed it.
it was, I was
further.
publicly criticized by Glassman for bringing it forward to the Charter Review Board. I thought that Peter Cruz did a great presentation.
So maybe that's not a good example, but I'm looking at these bullet points of what they suggested they could do, and it seems like you would want to jump on those things
Contribution limits,
first.
I mean, some of this
Well, that's a matter
information.
of ordinance, that's ordinance.
Yeah, I just include that in there because they brought it up.
It's really, if you want to discuss the contribution limits, honestly, I think we should include representatives from even the FBI office on the public honest services, govern some of that as well. We already heard from the OIG, we heard from the county attorney's office and the Office of Inspector General. And the only one missing would be the federal government on the honest services that deal and address contributions.
Okay, what's your reaction to that suggestion from Paul?
Well, I mean, I saw that, I just don't think that's a hook for everybody. I mean, I know that we have to
Well, you have to be
follow what the
educated.
commission asks, but I still think having an orientation.
Let's assume, I think we've sort of agreed that we're gonna do some sort of a orientation.
Okay,
This is
so
what's
I just
happening.
want that to be
These
shoved
are- we're
aside,
not- no,
alright.
He's gonna come back to us with that.
Okay.
We're gonna do
Alright.
some,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
do some sort of an orientation, okay.
Okay.
Now, the question is, what topic, in our first news flash to the civic, maybe we should start with the commission
I think it's
items.
probably right,
What do
yeah.
you think of that, Michael?
And sure, and another one, a better example might be election cycles. That's fundamental.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental thing. So they wanted you to take a look at the current charter language, see if there's a recommendation to allow for a primary. Well, if we know that if the election stays in November, they cannot be a primary. But do you want to discuss moving it to another time or moving it back to March? But it sounds like, so elections are pretty fundamental. And
Right.
and it's one of the things on the list that the city commission wanted you to look at.
Why would you want to reduce voter participation in elections versus the whole concept? And it was Sorensen, Glassman, Trentalis, Moritas, and McKenzie that put it on the ballot to change it to the November elections. So that was all done at their direction, and the voters overwhelmingly voted to support it.
So my question is, in terms of sequencing, let's assume that we pick some items off the commission's list. We said we're gonna deal with this first. When would the public participation part, what would that come in? Do we discuss it here, we decide what we're gonna think about doing, or do we go to them and say, we're gonna discuss voting, what do you have to say about it? I mean, how would that roll out to these groups that we're trying to make sure we touch?
I would like to see this group actually go through those things and come up with a recommendation for public input. That's my thought. Because you're gonna throw this out, to just, the regular person on the street, and they're gonna go, oh, I don't really care what you do, because I don't really understand it. So I think if we come to some conclusions on these, and and you can say, well, we've come to this conclusion, and this is what it will mean.
We
This
could
is
even
what the
call it a
change will be.
preliminary conclusion,
Yeah.
subject to getting input from the public, so that they.
Yeah.
Correct.
What do you think of that, Judy?
Well, you can't object to the public having input.
No, I'm talking about the sequencing of, Mary's suggesting that we discuss things here, elections, we discuss things here in our meeting, we come to some preliminary recommendation, and at that point, we go out to these civic associations and say, this is what we're thinking about, what do you think? That's
Well,
what.
actually, that's what we were doing, because we took the items, we would have the city attorney's office take our comments, we would vote on it. City attorney would bring back the input and the rewrites, we would then review it and send it back.
No, but I'm talking about going to the.
But what I'm saying to you is, we had plenty of opportunities doing that with public input.
I know, but we
With
did.
them at the table.
Listen, I was part of it, we didn't do a good job.
Well, did we not do a good
No.
job, or is the fact that other people did not communicate well?
Anyway, I'm taking the responsibility of, we're the CRB, it's our job to do this. There was some problem last time, whether it was our fault or their fault, it doesn't really matter. Let's figure out a way to do it better this time.
Moving forward, that's why
Well,
we're here, and
I
that's
do
why.
think it's the responsibility of the commission. They have their pre-agenda meetings to notify their constituents about when these meetings are, that they can participate. They always had the right to ask us to
Some
attend
commissions have.
or have staff attend their pre-agenda meetings and get input that way as well. Mary?
All the pre-agenda meetings that I've ever attended, I always go to ours in District 1. I've been to District 2s, I've been to District 3s, I've never been to District 4s. They literally go
You've been
through
District 3.
the meeting. There's no guest speaker of any of the ones that I've ever been to. It's always they
District
go
3, we
through
do
the
get
agenda.
speakers at District 3.
Excuse me?
We do speakers at District 3.
Well, I've never been to a District 3 pre-commission meeting. But I have been to the other ones, I don't recall there being a guest speaker.
Well,
That's not true.
Who
I know-
There would from time to time, but
Yeah,
it wasn't
all the
often.
speakers.
We had FPL once, I remember that, but
And District 4 did that. They had guest speakers.
did they have anybody from like the Parks Board or
Yes, they did.
infrastructure? I'm on
Yes,
the
they
Parks
did.
Board,
They
I
had
don't remember
Alan
that.
Dodd. They had they had the staff. They would invite the staff person to come out and do the presentation.
Maybe that's the gap, maybe there's a gap there.
Mhm.
The civic association inviting staff versus a representative from the respective boards. Because it's a different perspective. You look at staff as the government and reading from the cue card, whereas if you talk to somebody who's on a board, they might bring a different insight into the discussion, present it differently, so it might be more engaging.
True.
So Anthony, let me ask you this question. So then, would you if you're hearing the chatter, would you say to the respectful commissioners at your pre-agenda meetings, can you have one of us come and speak on the CRB?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I'm not.
I'm just saying, think of something-
I did that in District
I'm just saying something moving forward. Well, moving forward, it's because when the respectful people who were sitting there at the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Associations, Christine Jones, Frankie Thomas, Melrose, people from Melrose Park. They said this is the first time they heard of this.
Well,
So,
those,
and they're very informed. I'm sorry,
well,
they're very informed.
I will differ with you on that, on
Well,
the
you're entitled to it.
individuals that you chose to name. They're not engaged with their community.
Okay,
And you can see that when you go into meetings. I've been in meetings in Melrose Park on the streetlights, and the overwhelming results and demands of that community were not what Donna Guthrie and her board represented to the commission. So again, you have to weed through, and that's where you trust the district commissioner to know who in their district actually communicate. Richard?
You know what, I'm gonna make a motion. If you don't, if you wanna vote it down, that's great. Okay, first motion I'm gonna make is that we ask Anthony to come up with a plan for a citywide orientation for, so people understand this process is going on and that they're aware of it. So that's my first motion.
I second it.
Call the question. Richard,
aye.
I'll go along with it.
Okay, my second motion is gonna be that we select some items, priority items from the city commission, and we address those first in our meeting, and then once we come to a consensus, we then ask the staff again to disseminate our preliminary suggestions to the Civic Association in a small piece so that they can then give us input on it.
I second it.
Yes, I say yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the way we proceed.
okay, good.
And so the last thing to do is for us to go through the list of the direction from the city commission and decide for the next meeting. Okay, so at the next meeting, I think we should do, did you want an orientation from Paul to go through what we've done, or do you wanna do it individually with Paul, or how do you wanna do it?
I think this ought to be done just for Paul's sake at one time.
It's too much, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna come to every,
Alright, so at our next meeting, let's, Paul, if you don't mind, to go through, maybe we don't need the whole thing, maybe we need to pick some items and for Paul address where we've gone on those items.
Awesome.
Because that's, so let's pick some items for our next agenda that are on the city commission's hot list.
Sure.
And then
you
Paul
might
can-
even have some of that already kind of prepared.
So
It's in the backup.
things that you've addressed or some that you haven't also?
I would suggest we look at some of the ones we've addressed
I
because
think
we can
so.
get through those quicker and
Yeah.
Yeah, I would take the ones that we spent the most time on.
Yeah.
And that dealt a lot with the P3,
Yeah.
the leasing versus
Public land.
licensing, and
and
we spent months
Right.
dealing with that issue,
so like
months.
disposal of public land issue.
And
That's
and
huge,
just a statement too, in 2023, when we started this process, we said the first few months, we're doing it as an educational value, which is why we brought in speakers, why we brought in the county attorney's office to discuss where the county charter governs over municipal government, why we brought in the OIG, why we then brought in the attorneys for the supervisor of elections, why we brought in Peter Cruz. We spent that first year really working on educational value as to what's going on and what really governs. And then, Richard, we had you working as the liaison because of your years of experience serving at the county charter and writing charters in multiple counties and cities here as well. So really, the first year was really spent on
So why don't we
education,
go back to those priority items that we worked on, which were public lands,
public lands.
elections, and why don't we just start with those two? That's
Yeah,
a
I think
lot.
that's fine,
Yeah.
that's good, I
Okay,
remember.
so Paul, for the next meeting, if you could be prepared to do an update for the current board members
Mhm.
on where we were on those items, and if the current board members could look at what we did on
And I
those.
wish David was here when you do that, because David had the financial results of what it would cost to switch to mail-in elections as well. So it was another concept.
Well,
We discussed all angles, and it was very important
We'll get to it.
that we looked at all that.
Do you want
Financial
that,
impact.
do you want that at the next meeting also for David?
Yeah, if you're going to discuss elections, you have to discuss it all.
Yeah, I feel like it's too much. We just need a small piece, we need to take it in pieces, is what
Yeah.
you
I
guys are saying.
I can break it down from that
Yeah.
PowerPoint though, because the data's in there, so I'll just pull it out.
Maybe for the next meeting, if we just discuss the whole public land issue, because it's so much, you know, the leasing and the and licenses and all that stuff, why don't we just do one next time? Let's just do that, and that way everybody will have
Which is
less.
rehashing, yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically rehashing the way
Exactly,
we
but I
treated
think it
this.
needs to be done. We have three or four new board members.
Yeah, we had, but we spent,
I know,
Months
you and
doing
I are the one, we're just gonna have to listen to it again.
well, my question is that maybe what they wanna do, and you can publicly notice it, is just do a workshop with the new board members in orientation as well. Besides the orientation you wanna do with the public, but an orientation with the new board members so they understand what we did for 2 years. Because otherwise we're rehashing.
Listen, I prefer just to do it by topic, it's just too much to
No, well,
absorb.
that's what I'm talking about. Topics of these, we spent, when you go back through the minutes, when we did all the education the first year, the topics that we chose to start with was elections and public lands.
Right, but like as far as I'm concerned, you know, my time, I'm happy to listen to the stuff again, you could learn something, I'm fine with it, you know.
Because we spent, what, like 4
I
meetings
know,
just
but
on
it's
the public
it's
lands.
just, it's you and me, so, you know, so I'm okay with rehearing the stuff again, it's okay for me, you know. But I think we should just put public lands on and you can maybe use the part of the PowerPoint, Paul, if you could suggest what we, did, everybody be up to speed and do what you said, Judy, go through the stuff and we'll discuss that issue.
I think it's good, and plus we already have that material.
Okay, so there's gonna be 2 items on the agenda. One is a report from Anthony regarding the outreach educational component for just the orientation part. And the second is gonna be the public lands issue. And so everybody can just read that stuff and be up to date.
Baby steps, that's fine. I was just saying, that was just my hand on the time.
Excuse me.
All right, want to go through the new code of conduct?
So you'll see, I brought, and we handed out the agenda memo that accompanied the ordinance, so that kind of explains.
Yeah.
This one?
This one?
Yeah, that kind of explains how and why it was done. And you'll see, and I've given you a copy of the final ordinance. It has not been codified yet. In other words, it's not in the Muni code yet. It's updated, I believe, every 6 months. I think,
Yeah,
twice a
something like
year.
that.
So it's not in there yet, but that's why if you were to go online and look at Muni code, it's not there yet. But here's the final ordinance.
Paul, could you just give us like the Reader's Digest version of the individual sections?
I still read that magazine.
You still like it? I like that, yeah.
What's really important
Was it fun?
is when you look at section dealing with the members do not manage the affairs of the city.
Well,
and
can we
do
just
not
go through it
going
just
to staff.
a little one by
Subject D.
one? So A is you can't, no cursing. A, right, bad language, right. B is profanity,
There's more than that. There's threatening, slanderous, disparaging,
Right.
mean-spirited, vulgar,
Right.
it's a little more than a person.
okay,
Yeah, that stemmed from the outburst.
and then profanity, B is profanity, intimidation, disparaging remarks towards the commission, city manager, city attorney. Anthony is exempted from this, so let's make whatever comes.
No, I fall under staff.
Okay, but also on social media, so you can't post stuff, bad stuff about Anthony on social media.
I'll vote for that.
Dignity, respect, and courtesy. I'm not refrain from being abusive, confrontational, disrespectful, intimidating,
And that's city manager, city attorney, city staff, and citizens.
but not Anthony. 4, okay, do this on your, does not manage the affairs of the city, I will not intrude in the daily operations. The city or undermine the city manager's lawful authority. Responsible for spring, okay, so we don't run the city. Focus on solving problems, appropriate decorum, professional demeanor. Gonna be
Preparation.
gonna be prepared. Respect diversity. Hold the best interest of the city. Well, is there anything here that's not just like common sense?
Well,
Is there any like little
the key
gestures?
though is actually on the first line, because I don't know if you've all done this. So if you look at the first sentence, shall commit to the following code of conduct by written affirmation, which shall remain on file with the city clerk. So I don't know if the
I
clerk
mean,
is.
written
Just for
affirmations.
the little history, was the outburst and the investigation which corroborated
I heard about it.
corroborated everything, but they couldn't enforce anything on the commissioner based on the fact that there was nothing written in the code dealing with elected officials, unlike staff. So city employees could be punished where commissioner couldn't. So that's
So
when
Paul,
they
you
came up
guys
with
gonna
this.
give us something to sign? Somebody's gotta give us
I
something
think
to
the
sign.
clerk's handle, I'm looking it up now, but I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
that hasn't been done yet.
there's a,
I haven't.
I asked about it for another board, they sent me some examples. I think it's a boilerplate, so, I think it's a boilerplate.
Yeah,
they
we just
use.
need to sign it,
So
that's
we'll
what it's
just-
saying.
Yeah, the clerk will.
I'll talk to the clerk's office and get them to supply it, and then we'll get it to everybody as soon as we can.
Okay.
So Jay talks about
We
conflict.
could use this.
Um,
When we talk about conflict, I mean, in some of the boards, you have business people, you have individuals that may even have corporations set up with people that appear before them. Do they have to disclose that if they have a corporation set up with the person that's lobbying before them for a vote?
So that's what this addresses. And a member whose personal employment or business relationship with a person or entity that is the subject of a matter which may come before the board or committee should disclose such relationship. And of course,
Because we have that with the P&C board.
Part 3 of Chapter 112 speaks for itself, the Code of Ethics. And obviously that governs conflict of interest situations. If there's ever an ethical question, an ethics question, you can ask us, of course. You can also call the Commission on Ethics hotline. But let me go back to asking us. Unfortunately, we cannot issue binding opinions on state ethics. So we can help you. We can go through it. We can give it our best shot. But in actuality, only the Commission on Ethics can issue binding opinions on state ethics laws. County code is different. If the issue is related to the Broward County Code of Ethics, then an agency attorney can issue a binding opinion if it needs to be filed with the county attorney's office. But in actuality, I don't think you'll ever run into that because that's for elected officials. So you really won't run into any issues under the Broward Code. But as to the state law, we can help you through it. We can take our best shot. But to get a binding opinion on state ethics law, it's the Florida Commission on Ethics.
And when Drew Myers came and presented to us, he had various people. He had Kristen Carter here specifically on the ethics code because that's the division with the county attorney's office falls under Kristen Carter.
So now, in the discussion about the charter and ethics as we did before, and you're talking about the elected officials, then yes, the county code applies.
And basically what we really spent a lot of time on as well was discussing items that may have been done here at the city that may be inconsistent with state law. So to try to, as Richard always said, we can get rid of some of the pages out of the charter by just changing and just adopting some kind of language so that we're consistent with state law, so we don't always have to go back and change the charter.
And don't forget, of course, the Government in the Sunshine Law, section 286.011 governs your conduct.
Which again, if you're doing something at the Council of Civic Association, make sure it's publicly noticed. Once it's publicly noticed on the city website, on neighbors or whoever, next door or anything else, then at least will they be covered, or should they have it posted
Well,
here since the two of them serve on the same board?
It depends, if two or more members of the same board, first of all, well, should not interact outside of a public meeting. So if two or more members of a board attend a different meeting, you could theoretically notice that two or more members of this board will be at some place.
So they need to start looking at that for the Council of Civic Association.
Michael and Mary, this is
Yeah,
important
I mean,
for
it's
you
a,
guys.
yeah, I really,
Because it means that if you guys are both at a Council of Civic
Which we will.
Association meeting, which you'll be,
Mhm.
and something comes up relating to the matters that, what's going on in the charter review, blah, blah, Michael, what do you think, Mary, you
And
guys,
We refrain from
maybe
speaking.
you want to,
Shouldn't
Jim will be the
We shouldn't
talker.
speak, we govern our
Shouldn't
tongues,
speak.
can't
Right,
speak.
if you don't speak,
No, yeah,
if you don't
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Well,
Question, Madam Chair, is that we would refrain, we address it to the liaison.
Mhm.
And then
you
he
shouldn't be if something to be, I'm not your lawyer, but I'm gonna give you advice.
right,
If something comes up relating to charter review, you should not be talking about it at all.
whatsoever.
Not with him, not with her, not with anybody at that meeting.
But what if somebody asks him as the liaison, a question, can he answer it or no?
Yeah,
I
Jim's
am.
fine,
Yeah,
That's
I'll
fine.
direct everything to him.
yeah,
Because I'm not on the board.
Done.
that's right,
Yeah.
yeah, just
Okay.
don't even.
That's why I'm sure you were
You also
my,
can't
you
use him
were
as
my
a conduit
fail-safe,
between
but
the two.
Right.
Come again?
You can't use him as a conduit.
Right.
Cannot use him as a
No,
conduit?
you
Conduit.
can't say,
Oh, you can use him as a
No.
conduit?
Cannot.
Cannot, yeah.
Cannot use him
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
conduit.
you can't
To
say,
frustrate the.
Jim, ask Mary what she thinks about this item, or
No.
Jim, tell Mary that I'm very much opposed to this, or
Oh, yeah, so have a roundabout conversation. Yeah, I understand.
I think we should have further discussion about the two of you being at the same meeting and how we're gonna handle that.
I think it's a very
I
good
think
idea.
we should,
We gotta protect them.
yeah.
I just don't think we
Because-
would talk about it.
No conversation would ever be
No.
had. No. There's too much other things going on in the
and
council.
the easiest bit is to do, a public notice?
It can be done, but it would be a
Just
notice
like
of
pre-agenda meetings, the
No, but
commissioners
there also
found that
needs to be,
pre-agenda.
there needs to be
That
minutes.
minutes. If they
It
interact,
needs to be open to everybody in the public,
Correct.
That's burdensome.
Because that's on the pre-agenda notices from each commissioner saying there may be more than one commissioner at the meeting, so it would need to be open.
so when you say you wouldn't speak, you mean you wouldn't speak to each other, or you wouldn't speak to the council, or you wouldn't speak?
No,
At all.
we
They're
wouldn't
not
speak
gonna-
about the charter revision
Vision
board,
board whatsoever.
At all.
Nothing.
he or I,
Either
Nothing.
one.
either one
So
of
if
us.
somebody at the council meeting asks a question about the charter, maybe they heard it someplace else, and they asked the question, they would remain silent and I would address it.
I think just to be
That's the best approach.
courteous,
Yeah.
you could say they would like to address, but because of the
And-
law, they
Oh, yeah.
can't address it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound like they're being,
Well, and I think
Safer
many
method
people that
would
are
be to do the
presidents
same
of,
as what the commission does on their
they
pre-agenda
are, you know,
It's a
the
little bit-
sunshine law.
you
I
have
mean,
to
I
be
can
careful.
just simply say because of sunshine
You need
law,
to be careful, because there's an appearance,
If it works for the commission.
like the two of you together in the meeting, like even if you guys are both, like, and I know this from elected officials, if two people see you chit-chatting or something, they'll presume that you're talking about, charter review stuff. So you should really like refrain from chit-chatting
Oh, yeah,
outside
yeah.
of these meetings. no emails,
I
no
never sit
phone.
next to her anyway.
Well, that's your loss. But I mean, you
He's
understand
doing
what I'm
something
saying,
else, yeah.
like in the beginning part, if you're both sitting around having coffee, you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't give any appearance that you guys are chit-chatting
Well,
about
that's good
charter
advice.
review
I
stuff, just
appreciate
stay
that. I
away
wouldn't
from
have
it.
thought of that really,
Thank
but
Don't
yeah.
go to lunch, don't take her out to lunch, don't take him out to lunch,
Oh, God.
Now also,
You're setting
Anthony,
no fly, Richard.
no.
Anthony, there's also in November of 2018, there was a presentation, and Lee was still here, a breakdown of all presentations of what all boards do, and was presented at the conference agenda. It might be good to circulate that to everyone here as well, so that people understand what the role of each board, every committee, what roles they have, and how the composition is, et cetera.
You said that was November 20?
November, I want to say November 18th, but it was in 2018, for sure.
I look for it.
It was a Lee Feldman conference agenda meeting.
Okay, any further business? We done, Paul? Anybody wanna say anything else just for?
Anything from the public?
From the public. Public?
Yes, I'm a public.
From the public.
You want to put your name on the record?
Sure.
Your name, sir?
Elijah Map,
Elijah McManny.
Natalie, L-E-Y, M-A-N.
Michael, you comfortable with this right now?
With what?
What do you say?
Sure, yeah, I'm,
Okay.
yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. I second.
Thank you. For the direction.
All right.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Hannah, it's a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you, Jim.
It's good to be seeing you.
Mary,